Hello everyone, hello Stick. It's good to be back once more doing a video after a delay of, I don't know, maybe 5 weeks or 6 weeks, I'm not sure, because I wanted to do a video a couple of weeks ago, but Shane couldn't do it because he had some things he has to get on with. So today's the day that I actually get to review some of my books and to talk about the AFD. So for those that don't know, the AFD stands for the Alternative for Deutschland, which is a party in Germany, or a political party in Germany, that are getting more and more support the longer the Ukraine war goes on. And tragically, 7 politicians died mysteriously. We don't know how or why, and we're not told we don't have any evidence, or at least a solid explanation as to why this is so. So there was a local elections in Germany, and 7 politicians died. 2 were reserve politicians for the AFD. And in the space of 2 weeks, when these local elections were set, we had these mysterious deaths, and there is no explanation as to why so many politicians and from the AFD all of a sudden died. And we get the usual explanations that if anybody questions or likes to do an investigation to try and find out why these politicians all of a sudden have died, they're accused of being conspiracy theorists and crazies and nut jobs and tinfoil hats. But this is a pattern. This is a pattern that I recognise from John F. Kennedy. When John F. Kennedy was assassinated, there were these witnesses that mysteriously passed away, and if you question the narrative, saying that no, these are all natural causes, then you'd be accused of being a conspiracy theorist. Now, conspiracy theorist, the term conspiracy theorist is a CIA invention. They invented the term, and it's amazing how those 2 words, up to this day, still have power to put people off, to turn away from the idea of being called a conspiracy theorist. Anyway, getting back to John F. Kennedy, there was this book called The Hit List by Richard Belzer, and it came out, I'd assume, 10 years ago or so, and I've watched 2 reviews on YouTube about it. It's with the author when he talks about it, and this lady whose name I can't recall, but she's got a really good YouTube channel, and she actually lives in Texas. I believe it is in Dallas. So she will go to all those locations of where these the death of John F. Kennedy. So she'll be at the grassy knoll, she'll be at the fence, at the triple underpass, and she'll go where Tippit was murdered. J.D. Tippit was murdered, a police officer that was murdered, and she's very, very good. Well, why am I talking about this when this is a channel about Berlin? Is because of those AfD politicians, which is a German political party that the mainstream media and the established parties, the CDU and the SDP, and there are others that are trying to get the AFD banned. So you immediately come up with these suspicions. Now, I wanted to order that book, going back to that John F. Kennedy book, because that's the pattern that I started to see with John F. Kennedy, Mark Dutroux, the 9/11 Twin Towers, and the the suspicious deaths when it was applied to the Clintons, so Bill and Hillary Clinton. There's so many deaths had occurred when they those that had died were in some way connected to the Clintons. So it's the Clinton, I think it's known as the Clinton body count. So I've got these books here. Now, I've ordered that book by Richard Belzner, the hit list, from America, but so it's going to be a while before I'll get it through. It will come through on the post. But I have another book called Fallen Stars. This is Air Crashes That Filled Rock and Roll Heaven by Rich Everett. Now, these aren't suspicious deaths. These are all of those that were in the pop, the rock, and country scene that died, whose plane crashes, who died as a result of their plane crashes. So Buddy Holly, I'm sure everybody knows. Patsy Cline, you know, if you're into country, he's a great country singer. Otis Redding, you know, Dock of the Bay. John Denver, Randy Rhoads, who was Ozzy Osbourne's guitar player, Stevie Ray Vaughan, who was probably, you could say, the son of Jimi Hendrix, because, you know, if there was anybody that could get the spirit of Jimi Hendrix and his guitar playing, it is Stevie Ray Vaughan. They all died as a result of plane crashes. Now, that wasn't really the real reason why I bought the book. The reason was because of the suspicious deaths of those, you know, of politicians, of CEO of big corporations, of well-to-do people within the elites, and anybody that is, you know, doing that, perhaps they're investigating in a crime of one kind or of another, say like the Jeffrey Epstein, for argument's sake, and then all of a sudden they have a plane crash. That was the main reason why I bought this book. It wasn't really so much for, you know, finding out how Buddy Holly died, because, you know, if I wanted to, I could get a book on Buddy Holly, but that really wasn't the point. So this is a sort of a compilation of all those deaths of those people in the pop and rock and country world who died as a result of a plane crash. But getting back to my point of those suspicious deaths, one of the ways that these deaths occur is a result of a plane crash. So I thought I'd just bring it to your attention. So anyway, this book is called Falling Stars, Air Crashes That Filled Rock and Roll Heaven by Rich Everett. So talking about the elites, I have a book here called Sabine Darnen. So Sabine Darnen is a survivor. She was somebody who was kidnapped and who was kept in a sort of a holding house, in a sort of a dungeon. It kind of looked like a dungeon, and so if you ever were to see those clips about Marc Dutroux, the Belgian monster, you know, is really famous for these kidnappings and child molestation and child trafficking. He was this sort of petty criminal during the 90s, I think in the 80s and 90s, who in one way or another was connected with the elites and who would farm these children out. So it's a really dark chapter of Belgium history, and you could say world history too. And the picture that she's holding is how she looked like as a child. And if I were to read this book now, it would sort of stick with the narrative of what actually occurred. So if you were paying attention to a lot of the news bulletins, or you was reading the newspapers, you would get an idea of the story and her experiences of being held by this man, Marc Dutroux. Now, why I talk about this is because of the suspicious deaths. Going back to John F. Kennedy with the witnesses, it happened with Marc Dutroux. So with Mark Dutroux, there were 30 witnesses. They had this inquiry, and they were taking it to court. And all of a sudden, these mysterious deaths occurred: car crashes, drownings, strokes, heart attacks, natural causes, all these kind of, and there's no explanation, and everybody, well, I say everybody, but certainly the mainstream media, because they do play a large part in all of this, will shrug their shoulders and rub their chins and scratch their heads and pretend like these coincidences are simply coincidences, because they say, well, we don't have the evidence that these mysterious deaths had anything to do with the Mark Dutroux case. So they'll it's almost like hear no evil, see no evil. So anyway, because of the AFD, that party that are accused of being extreme right wing in Germany, where they had those mysterious deaths 2 weeks before the local elections, where seven politicians died. This cements my point. When I saw this pattern with Mark Dutroux, where these witnesses mysteriously died, and hence why I'm holding up this book. Now, this is the only book that I know, as far as determined, of the Mark Dutroux case, written in English, and it's written by a survivor. So her name is Sabine Darnen, and the title of the book is I Choose to Live. So actually, it's probably worth a reread, this one. Excuse me. Okay, so I have another book here. This is called The Good Son by Christopher Anderson, and it's JFK Jr. With the mother he loved. Now her mother's Jackie Kennedy, and he was also known as John John. They called him John John. He died mysteriously. Plane crash. Unbelievable. This is a fabulous photo, I must admit, of the fashion of the day, the hairstyle of Jackie, her hair sort of with the flick, with the hair sort of flicks, the Oldsmobile's car. So if you're into classic cars, classic American cars, so I love, as I say, I love covers, because the cover should give you an idea of what the book is really about. And if you go in the back of the book, you will see her son as a grown man, and his mother looking very proudly to her son. And tragically, he died in a plane crash. And you sort of think, and then you come up with what they call the Kennedy curse. And because there are all these deaths, the assassination of John F. Kennedy, the assassination of Bobby Kennedy, then the accidental death of the son of John F. Kennedy, John John, and then you ask yourself the question, well, who benefits? Now, if I remember the story correctly, John John, or John F. Kennedy Jr., was set to become mayor of New York. Now, I wouldn't have doubted that he would have succeeded in becoming the mayor of New York. But tragically, because of that unfortunate plane crash that he was, and it was a plane that he was piloting with his fiancée, he was never able to become the mayor of New York. But who benefited? Hillary Clinton. You cannot make it up. So you've got here, let's see, a photograph of Jackie Kennedy, John John, and look who's at the end there, Bill Clinton. It just, and when you mention it, and when it's mentioned about, these suspicious deaths, these of that in some way connected with the Clintons. Everybody sort of smiles, do a sly smile or roll their eyes. So they all know. They all know, and yet it's a kind of like, oh well, you know, what can you do? And it's a shoulder shrug. That happens quite a lot. So let's see. So I'll change the books that I've got here. This is a book. This goes to World War II because clearly this is a subject that is dear to my heart, and also it's a book that I found in the wild. You know, so it's always nice if you can actually find things, you know, in a charity shop or thrift store, to our American viewers, of the sort of books that I have an interest in. So this one's called Barbarossa through the German eyes. So this book is about the events of the Germans fighting in the Eastern Front, or fighting in Ukraine and fighting in Russia. And what's unique about this book is that the author was able to have access to the letters that these men sent home to their loved ones, you know, to their family members, to their girlfriends and wives and so on. If any of my viewers watch my channel regularly, and my subscribers will know, I often mention the documents and diaries, because documents and diaries are written at the time, as opposed to memoirs. As memoirs, they come later. So the thoughts that you have, the ideas you have in your own mind, will have evolved compared to if you'd written a diary, if you'd written it at the time or shortly after the war's end. But what makes this particular book unique is the fact that they're letters. So letters count as much as diaries do. And if you have a whole collection of these letters, you'll be able to get a picture of what it was that these German soldiers went through when they were fighting in Ukraine and when they were fighting in Russia. One of the points I'd like to make is the Einsatzgruppen. The Einsatzgruppen were these designated soldiers by Himmler sent behind the lines to eliminate or to kill, murder, put it however way you want it, or the best way to describe it, because that's what it was, of Jews and undesirables. Let's put it that way. And just after the war, a lot of soldiers said that they had nothing to do with these murders of these Jews, like what the Einsatzgruppen did. But what gives them away is the letters that they write home, because they were all saying exactly that which they wouldn't admit after the war. So it was the letters that actually gave them away. So it wasn't just the Einsatzgruppen, it wasn't just the SS, it was the Wehrmacht soldiers. They partook in these murders. So being a truth seeker, you want to know, and being fascinated with history, you want to get as much evidence as you can find to actually prove a point, to actually come to be able to argue a point as to what actually really went on in Ukraine and in Russia between, I would say, 1941 and perhaps 1943, 1944, when the Russians were constantly and consistently being persistent in pushing the Germans out of Russia and out of Ukraine and all the way back into Germany. So Barbarossa Through the Eyes, The Biggest Invasion in History by Jonathan Trigg. Here's another one that I found in the wild, or I found in a charity shop or thrift store. This one's called The Officer's Armchair by Daniel Lee, Uncovering Hidden Life of a Nazi. Now this book, where the family got to know who this person was through documents that were sewn inside an armchair. And it was only after they undid the armchair, or the upholstery of the armchair, did they find all these documents to this particular, I'd assume, German officer, and of what he did during World War II. Whereas with this one, it's a combination. It tells the story, or tells many different stories from many different soldiers whose letters they sent home. Whereas this book talks about one particular soldier, one particular Nazi, one particular officer, through the documents that were hidden away in an armchair. So it gives it, not only does it tell you about what this particular person did during World War II, it's social history. So if you were somebody who was looking to do some investigating, some research into the life of Germans on a personal level, you get a sense of social history. So I think with this particular book, it focuses on one person as opposed to focus on, whole armies, shall we say. And I think that's what makes this particular person and this particular story so valuable, because it magnifies one particular soldier and his involvement in Nazi Germany and World War II. So, The Officer's Armchair, Uncovering the Hidden Life of a Nazi by Daniel Lee. Okay, this one is what I'm reading at the moment. This is Hannah Reich, Das Unzerstörbar. Or I don't know how I could best translate that. Unzerstört. Resolved? I wouldn't say resolved. I can't think of the translation. In meinem Leben. In meinen means in my life. So I think my interpretation of the title is the fact that she ironed out all the creases. By that I mean of all the things that she deliberately left out, just to make a nice fairy stories, if you like, of her life. And when I was reading it from the point of view of somebody like I can only describe as a fairy story. This is a quickie book, as you could see. And it also, if you look at the back of the book, you get all these other, like, celebrities, and it's almost like her being this famous Nazi, a kind of a celebrity as well. So if you can see, like, Richard Burton, Marilyn Monroe, Bridget Bardot, Bogart, Gene Kelly, Klaus Kinski, and treat her as a kind of as a celebrity, or as a minor celebrity, and it's all about the publishers wanting to make a quick buck of her notoriety post World War II. So she writes this book, probably takes her 2, 3 or 4 weeks of writing, then sends it off to the publishers, and they publish it. And it's all about marketing, it's all about PR, it's all about propaganda, it's all about how much publicity that she can draw on this particular book. But it really doesn't have any redeeming value. For me, it does, for one reason and one reason only. And that is the fact that it's written in German. And because I have to improve my German, And the only way you improve, well, not the only way, but one of the ways you can improve it is by reading. So I do my reading. Every time I go to work, I'll get the book out and I'll read it to work, on the way to work, or during my break, I'll read a few pages just to get the cobwebs, to clear away the cobwebs of the mind, so to speak, to kind of get me to used to reading German as opposed to reading English, because reading English, I could read English all day long, whereas reading German would be a struggle. But this book cannot hold up a candle to say this book or this book. There isn't, it's just not going to happen. This is just a quickie book, talking about the events of her life in a sweet and wonderful and wholesome way, and for the publishers to make some money while she's in the public eye. So anyway, Hannah Reich, das unzerstörbar in meinem Leben. So, again, I can't give you the precise translation of it, but meinen Leben means my life. So, wow, it's just, all I can say is that it's just she's ironing out all the creases of her life that she doesn't want to mention. So she gives she weaves this story of of her upbringing and all the nice things that happened as occurred to her, say for example, meeting Hitler at the end of the war. So that's that one. Now I'm not sure why I brought this particular book here. This is called Britain's Gulag: The Brutal End of the Empire in Kenya, written by Caroline Elkins. And I've got another one here called Prolonging the Agony: How the Anglo-American Establishment Deliberately Extended World War I by 3.5 years. I think this the reason why I brought these books, because it was almost like an afterthought, is to do with the research. So Caroline Elkins is this brilliant historian from Harvard, who studies African American history and African history, and what she did to write her book. This took about 10 years of research. So you imagine how much research she has to do before she actually gets to write the book. And I believe she actually learned the language. I can't know off the top of my head the language that she had to learn in order to speak with the natives of Kenya, of those of the Mau Mau, or the survivors of the Mau Mau, of the uprising in the 50s and in the early 60s. And it's through her research that you get to see what the British Empire once was. They were the most brutal, the most horrible. The things that they did to the Kikuyu, that's the tribe, it is beyond description. So if you see how they support Israel and the genocide in Gaza, it doesn't really surprise me. It really doesn't. When you get to read books like this, you get to see behind the curtain. You get to see what the establishment is really made of, and how the British Empire functioned, and their constant denials of the brutality that they did to the Mau Mau in Kenya. So I think the point I try to make with bring this to your attention is that some of the things that we learn from history tends to repeat itself. So if you look back in time and you study, say, First World War, Second World War, you could study the Boer War, you could study the Cold War, You could study the even going back to Napoleonic times. If you study these things, you get an idea of how say geopolitics, or at least how the war in Ukraine affects us, and how it can actually overwhelm you, because you start to see the truth. It suddenly makes sense. You know, you're not left wondering, well, am I told a pack of lies? You know, am I led up the garden path? But you know, with mainstream media, when you read books like this, you can see right past it, and you can get closer to the truth, because, like I say, I believe history has a lot to teach, and if you want to become wise, it's always good to actually read a book such as this, or Prolonging the Agony by Jim McGregor and Jerry Doherty. So that pretty much concludes my my presentation. I hope you're all well. I hope you will subscribe. Now, I have to say this: I've had subscribers who all of a sudden have disappeared. Now, my channel is really, really small, and you know, the amount of videos I've only got, I think this will be my 43rd video that I've put up on my channel. So if you are unsubscribed, please subscribe, leave a comment, because this will actually help my channel, and this will also help encourage new viewers to come and view my channel, especially those that are into history, into Berlin, into European history and German history as well. So auf Wiedersehen, alles Gute, und bitte fall nicht nieder.